Divide and rule, a classic colonial strategy of creating division and discord among the people so that they do not get united against the autocratic state. For over 15 years, Sheikh Hasina consolidated power through a series of election rigging, extrajudicial killings, state-enforced disappearances, and muzzling the voice of dissent. One other thing she did brilliantly was divide and rule. But in July, when hundreds, particularly the youth, were being killed almost every other day by security forces unleashed by Sheikh Hasina and also government-affiliated helmeted goons, then most of the country said enough is enough. They got united against a common enemy, Sheikh Hasina. Eventually, failing to withstand the huge pressure, Sheikh Hasina was forced to flee in India. An uprising happened. However, with the fall of Hasina's government, the political landscape began to fracture. Ideologically divergent parties that had once fought side by side against Hasina started to drift apart, and Flashpoint emerged as new political actors entered the scene. For decades, Awami League and BNP have been the main political actors in Bangladesh. In the absence of Awami League, BNP remains the only torchbearer of establishment politics. See, Awami League and BNP were like our Democrats and the Republicans. With Awami League gone, BNP is trying to adjust with a new political scenario where new opponents are rising from the right, left and the center. Without Awami League, two other political actors have gained grounds in Bangladesh. One are the students who led the mass uprising, and the other is the leading Islamist party, Jamaat-e-Islami, also controversial for their anti-liberation role in 1971. In this context, BNP finds itself increasingly at odds with the emerging student movement and its one-time ally, Jamaat-e-Islami. So, would the country descend further into chaos? Or are these symptoms of a vibrant democracy? A democracy which was missing in this country for over 15 years under Hasina. We would talk about all that in today's Star Explains. The first flashpoint that has emerged is about election roadmaps. BNP has been vocal about holding elections after implementing reasonable reforms to restore institutional integrity. BNP maintains that reform cannot go on forever and is advocating for polls within this year. Meanwhile, the interim government said elections might be held by the end of 2025 or the first half of 2026. BNP rejects this statement as vague and says undemocratic forces are orchestrating a plot to prolong national elections. However, student leaders and Jamaat has insisted on sustainable reforms, advocating for an extended timeline under the interim government led by Professor Mohammad Yunus. They say if reforms are not implemented, then any future government can also become autocratic. On February 5, BNP acting chairman Tareq Rahman has expressed concerns over the prolonged emphasis on reforms, which he suspects is being used as a pretext to delay the establishment of a people's government. Tareq warned that such delays would worsen the country's problems and emphasized the urgent need to form a government that addresses pressing issues like unemployment, commodity price hikes, and law and order. In contrast, Nasruddin Patwari, convener of the Jatiyo Nagorik Committee, a platform led by student leaders who toppled Hasina, on February 5 dismissed any immediate election plans, insisting that justice for past atrocities under Hasina must come first. Meanwhile, recently Jamaat's Amir Shofikur Rahman said if polls were to be held today, it would never be free and fair. On the other hand, the students have said they want local government elections before the national polls. On the other hand, BNP maintains that they would never accept local government polls before the national elections. They give two reasons. A, they say the interim government do not have a mandate to hold any local government polls, and they say that it is unprecedented in the history of Bangladesh that an interim administration holds a local government election or elections. Another thing that they emphasize is that local government polls have been historically marked by violence in this nation. They say that with the police administration still unstable, it would be very difficult for the interim government to conduct thousands of local government polls around the country without bloodshed. So they maintain that local government elections cannot and can never happen before the national polls. Students who led the uprising, frustrated with establishment politics, are reportedly considering forming their political party. BNP leaders see the emergence of a new political party as a challenge to their dominance. The term King's Party has been thrown around. Ruhul Kabir Rizvi, BNP senior joint secretary, has alleged that a state intelligence agency is covertly attempting to engineer a new political force, reminiscent of past efforts under military-backed government. Meanwhile, Nasiruddin Patwari of Jatiyo Nagarik Committee has said that BNP is the original King's Party in Bangladesh's political history. He referenced the formation of BNP by Ziaur Rahman, who was then the sitting president and former army chief, to substantiate his claim. Patwari stressed that Jatiyo Nagarik Committee is not engaging in any similar tactics, denying accusation that it is being molded into a state-sponsored political entity. Recently, a significant new tension surfaced when BNP Secretary General Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir raised concerns over the neutrality of the interim government, particularly regarding the involvement of student representatives such as Nahid Islam, a key figure in the July uprising. Fakhrul questioned whether such participation could ensure the fairness and neutrality required for free and fair elections. In an interview with BBC Bangla, Fakhrul warned that if student representatives were to remain in the interim government, it would undermine the entire electoral process, as political parties could not accept such a compromised situation. In response, Nahid said it is rather BNP who has pressurized the current interim government to appoint its own loyalists in key positions of the administration, such as that of the Attorney General and Inspector General of Police. He said a national unity government post August 5 could not be formed because of BNP's veto. One of the first disagreements that rose emerged focusing on the demand for the removal of President Mohammad Shahabuddin. The BNP strongly opposed the removal of President, citing concerns over potential constitutional vacuum that could destabilize the country and derail the electoral process. In contrast, anti-discrimination student movement see the removal of the president as essential to completing their victory over the 15-year rule of Sheikh Hasina, as the president was appointed by her. This conflict between BNP's cautious pragmatism and the student movement's radical demands could become the defining struggle in the months leading up to the election. How these groups navigate this divide will likely determine whether Bangladesh enters a new chapter of democratic consolidation or descends further into political uncertainty. The students said they would announce a proclamation of the July Revolution on December 31, 2024. They said it would be an announcement of the revolution that happened and that it would be a charter which would determine how the state would be run after Hasina. In response, the interim government said that it wouldn't be the students but the government who would prepare a formal declaration only after national consensus. A meeting with most political actors was also held in this regard. BNP said they would demand recognition of their sacrifices made during the last 16 years under the Awami League regime. The BNP do not consider the movement in July as a revolution. They consider it as an uprising. So, they say there could be a declaration, not a proclamation of the mass uprising. Another major debate in the political landscape is whether the current constitution should be amended or completely repealed and rewritten. The students who led the uprising is pushing to bury the 1972 constitution, branding it as Mujibwadi, a term implying it is closely tied to the legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of Sheikh Hasina. The students claims that the constitution drafted after 1971 liberation war has been used to entrench a power structure that benefits the Awami League. While the BNP accepts that the constitution need amendments, they strongly argue against its outright rejection. They say rhetorics like barring the constitution is reminiscent of fascism itself, and they say BNP won't let that happen. Lastly, is trouble in paradise. BNP has begun questioning Jamaat's role in the 1971 liberation war, a previously taboo subject in their alliance. Simultaneously, Jamaat has accused BNP leaders of corruption and extortion. This public divide, previously kept behind closed doors, underscores the ideological and strategic differences that have come to light. Recent events, such as BNP accusing the interim government of Jamaatizing the country's educational institutions and steering government appointments in Jamaat's favor, reflect the growing mistrust among both the parties. Summing up, charged political rhetoric is not uncommon in a democracy. Democracy is supposed to be messy. For 15 years, Bangladesh had no room for meaningful debate or dissent. What we are witnessing now, the clash of ideas, ideologies, and agendas, is a natural outcome of a nation rediscovering its democratic voice. Political parties with starkly different visions are bound to debate, and while these verbal skirmishes may seem unsettling, they are not unusual in a transitional phase. However, whether this newfound energy will lead to constructive progress or devolve into chaos is a question only time can answer. The nation has endured immense suffering, economically, socially, and above all, emotionally. The youth who bore the brunt of oppression and spilled their blood for this uprising have given the country a second chance. Wasting this opportunity on infighting and petty political rivalries would be a disservice to their sacrifices. It is time for all political actors to put the nation first and channel their differences into building a resilient and inclusive democracy.